The underground shelter smelled of damp earth and dying hope. Willow pressed her back against the cold stone wall, one hand splayed protectively across her swollen belly, the other clutching a rusted dagger that had been her mate's. 6 months. 6 months since she'd watched Rowan fall in the challenge circle, his blood soaking into the sacred ground while the conqueror stood over him, blade still raised, face hidden behind that terrifying silver mask. 6 months since her world had ended. The pup kicked beneath her palm, and Willow exhaled slowly, willing her racing heart to calm. Her child could sense her fear. Omega pups always could. She hummed softly, a lullaby Rowan had sung when they'd first learned she was pregnant, back when the Silver Moon Pack still stood proud, back when she'd believed they were safe. Foolish. They'd all been foolish. Footsteps echoed from somewhere above, and Willow's breath caught. She'd been so careful, only emerging at night to scavenge what little remained in the ruins. The Nightshade Pack had stripped the territory clean after the conquest, taking everything of value, absorbing most of the survivors into their ranks. But Willow had hidden, had stayed silent, had survived on stubbornness, and the fierce need to protect the life growing inside her. The footsteps grew closer. Multiple sets now, heavy boots on stone. Elder Miriam said the shelter was this way. The voice was male, young, tinged with the distinctive accent of the Northern Territories. Nightshade. Can't believe anyone would still be hiding down here after all this time. The Alpha King wants every survivor accounted for before we leave. A second voice. Older, harder. He's particular about loose ends. Willow's fingers tightened on the dagger. She could shift. Her wolf was still strong despite the pregnancy, but running would put the pup at risk. Fighting was suicide. The Nightshade Scouts would kill her without hesitation if she resisted, unless they thought she was valuable. She forced herself to stand, swaying slightly as her pregnancy-heavy body protested. The dagger went behind her back, tucked into her belt where they might not immediately see it. When the scouts rounded the corner, lanterns raised, she was waiting in plain sight, chin lifted, eyes defiant despite the terror singing through her veins. 3 of them, all male, all warriors by the set of their shoulders and the weapons at their hips. The youngest couldn't have been more than 20, his eyes widening as he took in her pregnant form. The oldest, the one with the hard voice, stepped forward, nostrils flaring as he scented her. Omega. Not a question. His gaze dropped to her belly, and something flickered across his weathered face. Not quite pity, but close. You've been down here since the conquest? Willow didn't answer. Let them think what they wanted. Boss is going to want to see this one, the third scout muttered. He was broader than the others, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Pregnant Omega, still on territory after 6 months? That's unusual. That's impossible, the hard-voiced one corrected. He studied Willow with unsettling intensity. Unless she's got a reason to hide. Whose pup are you carrying, Omega? The answer lodged in her throat like broken glass. Rowan's. The pup belonged to Rowan, the alpha the conqueror had killed, the mate whose bond mark had burned away from her skin the moment his heart stopped beating. She could still feel the phantom ache of it sometimes, the place on her neck where Rowan's claiming bite had been. Before she could decide whether to speak, a commotion erupted from somewhere above, voices raised in alarm, the clash of metal, a sound that might have been a body hitting stone. The scouts exchanged glances, hands moving instinctively to their weapons. Stay here, the hard-voiced one commanded. Then all 3 were running back the way they'd come, leaving Willow alone in the flickering lantern light. She should run, should take this chance and disappear deeper into the shelter's maze of tunnels. But her legs wouldn't move, and that same stubborn survival instinct that had kept her alive this long whispered that running would only make things worse. When the scouts returned, they weren't alone. Elder Miriam came first, supported between 2 Nightshade warriors, her ancient face drawn with pain. She'd been one of Silvermoon's most respected seers, and she'd stayed behind when the others surrendered, claiming she was too old to be worth taking. Now her rheumy eyes found Willow, and something like sorrow crossed her features. "Child," she breathed, "you should have run when you had the chance." I tried to tell her that. The new voice was female, sharp as cut glass. A woman emerged from the shadows behind the warriors, tall, elegant, with the distinctive silver streak in her dark hair that marked her as nightshade nobility. But Omega instinct is strong. She stayed to protect her pup, even knowing it was futile. The woman's gaze raked over Willow with clinical assessment. 6 months pregnant, unmated by her scent, hiding in ruins rather than accepting protection. Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Do you know what that makes you, little Omega?" Willow lifted her chin higher. "Alive." "Dangerous," the woman corrected. "The Alpha King is coming. He'll want to know why you hid, what you're protecting, and whose pup you carry. And make no mistake, he will find out." She gestured to the scouts. "Bring her to the surface, gently. If she or the pup are harmed before the Alpha King sees them, you'll answer to me." They bound her wrists with silk rope, strong enough to hold but soft enough not to damage. Willow didn't resist as they led her through the tunnels and up into the dying light of evening. The ruins of her home spread before her, achingly familiar even in destruction. The great hall where she and Rowan had been mated was nothing but rubble now. The gardens where she'd played as a child were churned mud and ash. The survivors, what few remained, had been gathered in what used to be the central square. Willow recognized faces. Old Bertram the blacksmith, Sarah who'd been training as a healer, young Thomas who couldn't have been more than 15, maybe 30 people total, all that was left of a pack that had once numbered in the hundreds. They'd set up a platform in the square's center, and Elder Miriam was being helped onto it. The old seer swayed, catching herself on the makeshift railing, and when she spoke, her voice carried with supernatural clarity, despite its frailty. "A prophecy was given to me in the moment of conquest," Miriam announced. The gathered survivors fell silent, even the Nightshade warriors stilling to listen. "I kept it secret, thinking I could change what was seen. But the gods care nothing for an old woman's wishes." Her eyes found Willow again, and this time the sorrow was overwhelming. The last pup of the conquered Alpha will either unite the warring packs or destroy them all. He will be raised by the hand that slew his father, and from that impossible bond, a new age will dawn, or darkness will consume everything. Miriam's voice cracked. "The child this Omega carries is that pup, the prophecy child, and he is coming." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Willow's hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective and terrified in equal measure. No, no, her pup couldn't be. This wasn't. "Well." The sharp-voiced woman smiled, and this time there was satisfaction in it. "That changes everything, doesn't it?" Horns sounded in the distance. 3 long blasts that made every Nightshade warrior straighten to attention. Willow felt it then, a pressure in the air like the moment before lightning struck. Power, ancient and terrible, rolling across the ruined territory in waves that made her wolf whimper and press low. The Alpha King was coming. They came first as shadows on the horizon, then as a procession of warriors and banners, the Nightshade sigil. A silver wolf beneath a crescent moon, snapping in the wind. The convoy moved with military precision, and at its head rode a figure that made Willow's breath stop in her chest. He was massive, even seated on horseback, broad-shouldered, and radiating the kind of presence that demanded submission from every wolf in range. But it was the mask that truly terrified her. Beaten silver covering the upper half of his face, leaving only a strong jaw and cruel mouth visible. She'd seen that mask before, in the challenge circle, moments before everything ended. Alpha King Alexei, the conqueror. The wolf who'd killed her mate, the man who'd made her a widow. The procession halted at the square's edge. Alexei dismounted in one fluid motion, and Willow was struck by how he moved, graceful despite his size, controlled despite the power that crackled around him like a visible aura. He was dressed for court rather than battle, all black leather and silver clasps. But everyone present knew he could kill without hesitation if provoked. He'd proven that already. The sharp-voiced woman stepped forward, bowing with precise formality. "My king, we've secured all remaining survivors as ordered. There's been a development." Alexei's head turned toward her, then swept across the gathered refugees. Counting them, Willow realized. Cataloging who remained, assessing their worth. When his hidden gaze reached Elder Miriam on the platform, he tilted his head slightly. "Elder." His voice was deep, resonant, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have something to tell me." It wasn't a question. Miriam repeated the prophecy, her words steady despite the tremor in her frame. Alexei listened without moving, without speaking, a statue carved from violence and will. When she finished, silence stretched like a drawn blade. Then his head turned again, scanning the survivors with new purpose. "The Omega," he said softly. "Where is the pregnant Omega?" The Nightshade warriors parted, revealing Willow where she stood between her guards. She wanted to look away, to hide from that masked gaze, but Omega instinct and stubborn pride warred within her. She'd already lost everything. She wouldn't lose her dignity too. So she stared back, chin raised, hand pressed protectively over her belly, and watched as the conqueror went completely still. The silence that followed was different than before. Heavier. Charged with something Willow couldn't name. Alexei took one step forward, then another, his movements suddenly less certain. The warriors around him exchanged confused glances, and the sharp-voiced woman's eyes widened. "My king?" Alexei ignored her. He was walking toward Willow now, closing the distance between them with the inevitability of fate itself. 5 steps. 4. 3. Close enough that Willow could see the silver threading through his dark hair, could smell cedar and night-blooming flowers, and something wild that made her wolf stir despite everything. Close enough to see his throat work as he swallowed. Their eyes met, hers amber and defiant, his hidden but burning with sudden, terrible intensity, and the world caught fire. The mate bond snapped into place like a chain made of starlight and iron, yanking Willow forward half a step before she caught herself. No, this wasn't possible. This couldn't. She was carrying Rowan's pup. She was mourning her dead mate. She couldn't be. But the bond didn't care. It blazed between them, undeniable and absolute, singing through her veins with the voice of destiny itself. Alexei staggered. Actually staggered, this massive warrior who'd conquered 12 packs and never shown weakness, catching himself against nothing with visible effort. When he spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of authority and control. "You." That single word carried everything: shock, recognition, hunger, denial. Willow felt it echo in her own chest, in the space where Rowan's bond had been, now filling with something new and terrifying. Then Alexei's gaze dropped to her pregnant belly, and something shifted behind the mask. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something harder, more determined. He straightened to his full height, and when he spoke again, his voice carried across the entire square. "This Omega is mine." The words rang with alpha command, undeniable and absolute. "She and her unborn pup are under my personal protection. Any who threaten them answer to me." His hidden eyes swept the gathered survivors and his own warriors alike. "Any who harm them die." The bond thrummed between them, pulling tight, and Willow felt her wolf respond despite her human mind's horror. This was the man who'd killed Rowan, the conqueror who'd destroyed her pack, her home, everything she'd known, the enemy who'd made her a widow and left her to raise her pup alone. And he was her mate. The gods, it seemed, had a vicious sense of humor. The journey to Alexei's fortress took 3 days, and Willow spent every moment of it wrestling with the impossible reality of the mate bond humming beneath her skin. She rode in a cushioned carriage, a luxury she'd never experienced even as the maid of an alpha, surrounded by nightshade warriors who treated her with careful deference. The sharp-voiced woman from the ruins, who'd introduced herself as Lady Thorne, sat across from her, watching with eyes that missed nothing. "You'll have everything you need at the fortress," Thorne said on the second day, her tone almost conversational. "The Alpha King has ordered the Eastern Tower prepared for you. Private chambers, a personal handmaiden, guards for your protection." "You mean guards to keep me from running?" Willow corrected, her hand resting on her belly where the pup had been unusually active since the bond snapped into place. Thorne's lips curved. "Can you run, little Omega? 6 months pregnant and bound by fate to the most powerful alpha in the territories?" She leaned forward slightly. "The bond won't let you go far. You'll feel it pulling you back to him, singing in your blood until you answer it. That's what mate bonds do." Willow looked away, staring out at the passing forest. She knew Thorne was right. Already she could feel it, the constant awareness of Alexei riding somewhere ahead with his warriors, the pull that urged her toward him despite everything he'd taken from her. It felt like betrayal, like her own body had turned traitor against Rowan's memory. "He killed my mate," she said quietly. "He killed an alpha who refused to surrender," Thorne corrected. "There's a difference. Rowan Silvermoon chose ritual combat over protecting his pack. He chose pride over survival." Her voice softened, just slightly. "The Alpha King gave him every opportunity to bend the knee, to save his people. He refused." The words hit like physical blows. Willow had heard the story from survivors, how Alexei had offered terms, how Rowan had spat at his feet and demanded single combat instead. She told herself it was courage, that her mate had died defending their honor. But sitting in this carriage, feeling the life kick inside her, she wondered if Thorne was right, if pride had mattered more to Rowan than the pack he'd sworn to protect, if he'd chosen death over her. The fortress rose against the northern mountains like a crown of stone and iron. Willow had heard stories of Nightshade's seat of power, but seeing it stole her breath. Massive walls, towers that scraped the sky, courtyards that could hold thousands. The wealth and strength on display made Silvermoon's modest territory look like a farming village in comparison. No wonder they'd fallen so easily. True to Thorne's word, the Eastern Tower chambers were lavish beyond anything Willow had known. Thick carpets, a bed large enough for four, windows that overlooked gardens still green despite approaching winter. A fire burned in an ornate hearth, and the scent of fresh bread and meat made her stomach clench with sudden hunger. "The Alpha King requests your presence at dinner," Thorne said from the doorway. "But he understands, if you need time to settle first, a handmaiden will be sent to attend you." Willow turned to face her. "Am I a prisoner?" "You're the Alpha King's fated mate, carrying a pup of prophecy," Thorne replied. "What you are, little Omega, is far more complicated than prisoner or guest. I suggest you figure out which you'd prefer to be." She left before Willow could respond. The handmaiden arrived within the hour, a young woman maybe a year or two older than Willow, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She introduced herself as Sarah, and Willow's breath caught because she knew that name. Sarah had been training as a healer in Silvermoon before the conquest. "You survived," Willow breathed. Sarah's smile was sad. "We all survived in one way or another. The Alpha King doesn't slaughter those who surrender. He absorbs them, gives them new purpose." She gestured to the room. "I was assigned here specifically because Lady Thorne thought you might prefer a familiar face." "I don't know what I prefer anymore," Willow admitted. She sank onto the bed, exhaustion from the journey finally catching up to her. The pup kicked again, harder this time, and she winced. Sarah was beside her immediately, healer's instincts taking over. "How far along?" "6 months. Maybe a bit more. I stopped counting after—" She couldn't finish. "After Alpha Rowan fell." Sarah's hands were gentle as she examined Willow's belly through the fabric of her dress. "The pup is strong, active. That's good." She paused. "Have you felt the bond affecting the pregnancy?" Willow's head snapped up. "What?" Mate bonds can accelerate pup development when they're not completed, Sarah explained, her healer's tone matter of fact. The pull between you and the Alpha King, it might push the birth sooner than expected. Your body recognizes him as mate, and Omega instinct wants the pup born so the bond can be fully realized. The thought terrified her. I'm not bonding him. I won't betray Rowan like that. Sarah's expression held infinite compassion. Rowan is gone. Willow, the bond you had with him died when he did. That's how mate bonds work. What you feel for the Alpha King isn't betrayal, it's fate giving you a second chance. I don't want a second chance with my mate's killer. Then you're going to have a very difficult life, Sarah said gently, because the bond won't fade, and the Alpha King won't let you go. I've served in this fortress for 3 months now, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you in those ruins, like you were air and he'd been drowning. Willow wanted to argue, but the memory of that moment stopped her. The way Alexei had staggered, the raw vulnerability in his voice when he'd said you. She'd felt it too, the recognition that went deeper than thought or choice. Soul calling to soul across bloodshed and grief. She hated it. Alexei came to her chambers that night, after she'd bathed and changed into a sleeping gown Sarah had provided. Willow heard the guards announce him, heard his heavy footsteps in the corridor, and considered refusing him entry. But Omega instinct wouldn't let her. The bond sang at his approach, pulling tight with anticipation that made her skin flush with shame. He filled the doorway when he entered, massive and imposing even without his armor. He'd removed the silver mask, and Willow saw his face fully for the first time. Strong features, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, eyes the color of smoke and winter storms. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30 at most, and devastatingly handsome in a way that made her hate herself for noticing. "May I come in?" His voice was quieter than in the ruins, almost careful. Willow gestured stiffly. He entered but stayed near the door, as if approaching too quickly might spook her. The bond stretched between them, taut and aching, and she watched his jaw clench as he fought the same pull she felt. "You have everything you need?" he asked. "I have a gilded cage." "You have safety, protection, comfort?" His storm-colored eyes held hers. "You have more than you would have had hiding in those ruins waiting to starve." "I had freedom." "You had death," Alexei corrected. "For you and your pup. Is that what you wanted? To die rather than accept help from me?" "You're not offering help. You're taking, the same way you took my pack, my home, my mate." "I gave Rowan a choice." The words came out harder than he'd clearly intended. Alexei drew a breath, visibly controlling himself. "I offered alliance. I offered to let him keep his territory if he'd simply acknowledge my authority over the northern territories. I didn't want to fight him." "But you killed him anyway." "He challenged me to single combat, in front of both our packs. I couldn't refuse without looking weak. And weakness in an alpha means more death, more challenges, more war." Alexei took a step closer. "I gave him every opportunity to yield during the fight. Every one. He chose death over bending his pride." Willow's hands fisted in her sleeping gown. She wanted to call him a liar, but the survivors had said the same. Elder Miriam had whispered it before they'd left the ruins. "Your mate chose honor over sense, child. He could have lived." "You took everything from me," she said, and hated how her voice broke. "I know." Alexei moved closer, and this time she didn't stop him. "I know, and I cannot undo it. But the bond between us—" He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "I didn't choose this any more than you did. But it's real, Willow. You feel it. I feel it. Fighting it will only cause us both pain." "Good. You deserve pain." Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something older and deeper. "Perhaps I do. I've killed many in combat, conquered 12 packs, made decisions that haunt my sleep. Perhaps the gods gave me you as punishment. a mate who'll hate me until I die. He reached up slowly, telegraphing his movement, and touched her face with startling gentleness. But I will protect you anyway. You and your pup. That's what mates do. The bond flared at his touch, and Willow gasped as warmth flooded through her. She jerked back, and Alexei's hand fell away immediately, though she saw the effort it cost him. I should go, he said roughly, but I'll return tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after, until you understand that I mean what I say. He moved toward the door, then paused. The pup, when is it due? 2 months, maybe 3. His throat worked. I'll have Sarah monitor you closely. If you need anything, tell the guards. Whatever you want, it's yours. He left before she could respond, and Willow sank onto the bed, shaking. Her hand moved to her belly where the pup had finally quieted, and she whispered to the life inside her. I won't love him. I won't betray your father's memory. I promise. But the bond hummed with longing, and she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. Alexei kept his word. He came every night, always asking permission to enter, always keeping his distance until she allowed otherwise. They talked, or rather, he talked and she listened despite herself. He told her about the United Pack system he was building, about trade agreements and peace treaties, about laws protecting Omegas from forced bonds and abuse. He painted a vision of territories united not through fear, but mutual benefit, and Willow found herself reluctantly fascinated. On the 5th night, he brought books, rare, precious things that Silvermoon could never have afforded. He'd remembered her mentioning that she'd once hoped to study healing. On the 8th night, he asked about Rowan, and Willow found herself sharing memories she'd kept locked away. Alexei listened without judgment, and when she cried, he handed her his handkerchief and stayed silent until she'd finished. On the 12th night, she asked him why he wore the mask. To hide weakness, he admitted. They were sitting in the gardens outside her tower, the moon full overhead. When you conquer through strength, showing your face makes you vulnerable. The mask makes me a symbol instead of a man. But you're showing me your face now. His smile was small, sad. You're my mate. You've already seen every weakness I have. The pup chose that moment to kick, hard, a rolling movement that made Willow gasp and press her hand to her side. Alexei was on his feet instantly, warrior reflexes taking over. What's wrong? Should I call Sarah? No, it's... Another kick, stronger. The pup is just active tonight. She felt the movement again, a tiny foot pressing against her palm from the inside, and despite everything, she smiled. Feel this. He's fighting already. The words were out before she could stop them. Alexei froze, his eyes dropping to where her hand rested on her belly. The longing in his expression was naked, devastating. May I? His voice was rough. Please, Willow. May I feel? She should say no. Should keep this boundary between them, this last piece of her life with Rowan that Alexei couldn't touch. But the hope in his storm-colored eyes broke something in her, and she found herself nodding. Alexei knelt before her, slow and careful, as if approaching something sacred. His hand, so large it could crush stone, settled on her belly with infinite gentleness. They stayed like that, frozen, while the pup kicked against his palm. The bond between them ignited. Willow felt it like lightning, the connection blazing brighter as Alexei touched the life inside her. His eyes widened, wonder replacing everything else, and when the pup kicked again, directly into his hand, a sound escaped him that might have been a laugh or a sob. He's strong, Alexei breathed. Gods, he's so strong. He's a fighter, Willow agreed, and realized she'd stopped thinking about pulling away. Alexei's hand was warm against her belly, his touch reverent, and for this moment she could almost forget everything else. Could almost imagine they were just two mates feeling their pup move together. Then reality crashed back and she jerked away. Alexei's hand fell to his side, but he stayed kneeling, looking up at her with such raw emotion that she couldn't bear it. I should go inside, she said, standing too quickly. The sudden movement made her dizzy, and Alexei caught her elbow, steadying her. Willow, please, I need time. He released her immediately and stepped back. Of course, I'm sorry if I… Don't. She cut him off, wrapping her arms around herself. Don't apologize. Just give me tonight. Please. Alexei bowed his head and left without another word. Willow watched him go, then pressed her hand to her belly where his had been moments ago. The pup kicked again, as if asking where the warmth had gone. I don't know what to do, she whispered to the night, to the child inside her, to the mate bond that refused to quiet. I don't know how to hate him and want him at the same time. The gardens gave no answer, and Willow returned to her gilded cage alone. The summons came 3 weeks later, crashing into the careful routine Willow had built. She was in her chambers with Sarah, reviewing exercises to prepare for labor, when shouting erupted from the courtyard below. Both women rushed to the window and saw riders approaching the gates, at least 50 warriors bearing an unfamiliar sigil, a black wolf devouring the moon. That's Marcus Bloodmoon's banner, Sarah breathed, her face going pale. He's the alpha of the Western Territories. He and the king have been circling each other for years, neither strong enough to defeat the other outright. Willow's hand moved instinctively to her belly. Why is he here? They didn't have to wait long for the answer. Lady Thorne appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. The Alpha King requests your presence in the throne room, now. The throne room was chaos barely contained. Marcus Bloodmoon stood in the center, surrounded by his warriors, facing Alexei, who sat on his throne with deadly calm. The silver mask was back in place, making him the conqueror once more, rather than the man who'd knelt in moonlight to feel her pup kick. Willow was escorted to a seat near the throne, elevated enough to be protected, but visible to everyone present. Marcus's eyes found her immediately, and his smile made her skin crawl. So the rumors are true, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the hall. The mighty Alexei has found his fated mate, a pregnant Omega widow no less. How touching. State your business, Marcus. Alexei's voice was flat, dangerous. You didn't ride for 3 days to comment on my personal life. Didn't I? Marcus gestured to Willow without looking away from Alexei. That Omega carries the prophecy, child. Elder Miriam's vision has spread across all territories. A pup who will unite the packs or destroy them. That concerns every alpha, not just you. The pup is under my protection. The pup belongs to all of us, Marcus countered. He's the last blood of Rowan Silvermoon, born of a conquered pack. By ancient law, he should be raised in neutral territory until he's old enough to choose his own path. Instead, you're keeping him here, raising him to be your puppet prince. Alexei stood in one fluid motion, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Careful, Marcus. I'm not the only one concerned, Marcus smiled wider. 7 alphas have signed a petition demanding you release the Omega and child to neutral ground. We'll ensure the prophecy plays out fairly, without your interference. He paused. Or we can discuss this another way. Through ritual combat. You win, we acknowledge your right to the pup. I win, the Omega and child come with me. The throne room erupted. Warriors on both sides reached for weapons, and Willow felt her wolf surge with protective instinct. She stood without meaning to, drawing every eye. No. The word came out stronger than she'd expected. Marcus turned to her fully now, his gaze assessing and cold. The Omega speaks. How novel. The pup is mine, Willow said, forcing herself not to shrink under his attention. Not yours, not anyone's. He's my son, and I will decide where he's raised. And you choose the man who killed his father? Marcus's voice dripped with false sympathy. How tragic. The bond makes you his slave, forces you to accept his claim. This is exactly why the pup should be removed. Get out. Alexei was moving down the steps now, and Willow felt his rage through the bond like a physical force. You insult my mate under my own roof, threaten my family, then dare speak of fairness? Leave now, Marcus, or I'll forget the laws of hospitality and kill you where you stand. Marcus didn't flinch. You have 3 days to consider my offer. After that, I'll return with all 7 alphas and their combined packs. Stand alone and lose, or give up the pup peacefully. He bowed mockingly to Willow. Think about it, little Omega. Who do you trust with your son? The conqueror who slaughtered his father? Or wolves who can raise him free of blood debt? He swept from the hall, his warriors following. The moment they were gone, Alexei turned to Thorn. Double the guard on Willow's tower. No one enters without my express permission. Send runners to our allied packs. I want confirmation of this 7 Alpha alliance Marcus claimed. His eyes found Willow behind the mask. You should return to your chambers. It's not safe. I'm not a child to be dismissed, Willow cut in. Her heart was racing, but she held her ground. This concerns my pup. I deserve to know what you're planning. Alexei stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. Tonight. I'll come to your chambers tonight and we'll discuss everything. But tonight came sooner than either of them expected, and with far more blood than anyone anticipated. The assassins came at midnight. Willow woke to the sound of shattering glass and the acrid stench of blood. Her wolf surged to the surface, protective instinct overriding everything else as she rolled from the bed, one hand pressed to her swollen belly. The chamber door burst open, not guards coming to save her, but 3 figures in dark leather, blades gleaming in the firelight. She didn't scream. Screaming wasted breath she needed for fighting. The first attacker lunged, and Willow threw herself sideways, her pregnant body slower than she wanted but still fast enough. The blade meant for her heart caught her shoulder instead, tearing through fabric and flesh. Pain exploded white-hot, but she kept moving, grabbing the iron poker from the fireplace and swinging it with desperate strength. It connected with the assassin's temple. He dropped like cut string. The second one was already moving, faster than the first, blade angling toward her belly. Willow twisted, taking another cut across her ribs rather than let the weapon reach her pup. Her wolf howled inside her chest, demanding she shift, but she couldn't. Not at 6 months pregnant. Not without risking the baby. Then the chamber door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Alexei moved like violence given form. He caught the second assassin mid-lunge, one hand closing around the man's throat, and squeezed. Bone crunched. The body hit the floor before Willow could blink. The third assassin tried to run, and Alexei was on him in 2 strides, his claws extending, tearing through leather and flesh with surgical precision. The man's scream cut off abruptly. Silence fell, broken only by Willow's ragged breathing and the drip of blood, hers and theirs, on the stone floor. Alexei turned to her, his eyes blazing silver with alpha rage, and she saw the exact moment he registered her wounds. You're hurt. His voice was barely human, roughened by the wolf riding just beneath his skin. He was at her side in an instant, hands hovering over her bleeding shoulder. Where else? Did they... The pup? The pup is fine. Willow's legs gave out, and Alexei caught her before she could fall, lifting her with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still humming through his frame. My shoulder and ribs, but nothing vital. Alexei, how did they get past the guards? His jaw clenched so hard she heard teeth grind. Thorn is investigating now. Someone betrayed us. He carried her toward the door, stepping over corpses without a glance. We need to get you to the healer, and then... A contraction seized Willow's belly, sharp and unmistakable. She gasped, her hand flying to her stomach, and felt warmth spreading down her thighs. No, not now. It was too early. 6 months, not 7. The pup wasn't ready. Willow? Alexei's voice cracked with fear she'd never heard from him. The baby, she managed. Something's wrong. Alexei, something's... Another contraction, harder than the first, and this time she did scream. The birthing room was chaos. Sarah worked with frantic efficiency, her healer's hands steady despite the blood soaking the sheets. Lady Thorne stood guard at the door, and Willow could hear fighting still raging somewhere in the fortress. More assassins, a coordinated attack timed to catch them vulnerable. The stress triggered early labor, Sarah explained, her voice tight. The pup is coming whether we're ready or not. Willow, I need you to focus. When the next contraction hits, push. Willow barely heard her. Pain consumed everything, wave after wave that left no room for thought. Her wolf was howling, terrified for the pup, and she felt herself starting to shift involuntarily, her body's last desperate attempt to protect the life inside her. Don't shift! Sarah's command cut through the haze. If you shift now, you'll kill the pup. Hold your human form. Willow, hold it. She couldn't. The wolf was too strong, too desperate, claws starting to emerge from her fingertips. Alexei's hand closed around hers, and the mate bond blazed to life between them. Look at me. His storm-colored eyes held hers, anchoring her when everything else was spinning apart. You can do this. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Stay human, Willow. Stay with me. The bond hummed with his certainty, his absolute faith in her, and somehow that was enough. Willow held her human form through sheer will and the strength Alexei poured through their connection. When the next contraction hit, she pushed and pushed and pushed until she thought she might break apart. Then a baby's cry split the air, thin and outraged and absolutely beautiful. It's a boy, Sarah breathed, her voice thick with emotion. She cleaned him quickly, checking for injuries, then placed the tiny bundle on Willow's chest. He's small but breathing well, 10 fingers, 10 toes. You did it, Willow. Willow stared down at her son, and felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. He was perfect, small and red-faced and furious at being born, but perfect. Dark hair plastered to his scalp, eyes squeezed shut, one tiny fist waving in the air as if already prepared to fight the world. Kieran, she whispered, the name coming to her with bone-deep certainty. His name is Kieran. Alexei stood frozen beside the bed, staring at the pup with such naked wonder that Willow's breath caught. When Kieran wailed again, Alexei reached out with one massive hand, letting the pup's fingers close around his thumb. The baby quieted instantly, and Alexei made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Hello, little one, he murmured. Welcome to the world. I promise, it's not usually this violent. Lady Thorne cleared her throat from the doorway. My king, we've secured the fortress. 12 assassins total, all dead. But we lost 8 guards, and... She hesitated. Marcus sent a message. He claims this was just a test. The real attack comes in 3 days, unless you hand over the Omega and pup. The gentleness vanished from Alexei's expression, replaced by something cold and deadly. He looked down at Kieran, still holding his thumb, then at Willow, exhausted on the blood-stained sheets. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute conviction. Marcus just signed his own death warrant. 2 days later, Lady Thorne discovered the poison. It arrived as a gift, beautiful bottles of wine with Marcus's seal and a note calling for peace negotiations. Willow was still recovering from the birth, Kieran sleeping in a cradle beside her bed, when Alexei's sister Nadia volunteered to test the wine for safety. What happened next would later be pieced together from witness accounts. Nadia had indeed tested the wine. Then she'd switched it, replacing the poisoned vintage with a similar but harmless bottle in the kitchens. When the safe wine was served at dinner, Willow had drunk it without question. She collapsed within minutes. The wolfsbane poison worked quickly, shutting down her organs one by one. Sarah worked desperately, but the healer's face grew grimmer with each passing moment. Only one thing could save a wolf from wolfsbane, and everyone in the room knew it. A mate's bite, the completion of a bond. But Willow was unconscious, unable to give consent. Alexei stood over her dying body, his hands shaking, the first time his warriors had ever seen the conqueror show fear. Lady Thorne urged him to bite her anyway, to save her life first and beg forgiveness later, but Alexei refused. "She hasn't forgiven me for killing Rowan," he said, his voice hollow. "If I force the bond without her consent, she'll hate me forever. She deserves the choice." "She deserves to live," Thorne snapped. "Not like that." Alexei looked down at Willow's pale face, and the warriors present would later swear they saw the conqueror break. Not by having her will taken from her. She's had too much stolen already. Instead, he made the hardest decision of his life. He ordered Willow taken to the sacred healing temple 3 days' journey away, where ancient magic might save her without the bond. He would stay behind to face Marcus. The enemy would expect him to run with Willow, making it the perfect time to strike. His best warriors would guard the convoy while he played decoy. It was the only way to protect both Willow and Kieran. Lady Thorne gripped his arm. "If she dies before reaching the temple, then the gods are crueler than I thought," Alexei finished. He pressed his forehead to Willow's one last time, breathing in her scent of wild sage and mountain rain. "But I won't steal her choice, not even to save her." The convoy left at dawn, and Alexei watched until it disappeared into the forest. Then he went to make Marcus bleed. Marcus met him in single combat as tradition demanded. They fought in the ancient challenge circle with both packs watching, and it was brutal. Marcus was strong, vicious, every bit the alpha his reputation promised. But Alexei fought with a desperation that transcended mere violence. He was fighting for his mate, for the pup she'd given birth to bleeding and terrified, for the future they might never have. Marcus fell to his knees, defeated, and Alexei's blade pressed to his throat. Every wolf present expected the killing blow. Instead, Alexei pulled back slightly. "Yield," he commanded. "Call off your alliance, swear peace, and I'll let you live." Marcus laughed, blood bubbling from his split lip. "Merciful now? How the mighty have fallen. Tell me, conqueror, did you really send your dying mate off while you played politics?" His smile turned vicious. "I hope the second team finds her before she reaches the temple. I gave them very specific instructions about what to do with pregnant Omegas." The words hung in the air for one crystalline moment. Then Alexei's blade moved. Marcus's head hit the ground before his body did. Alexei was already running, shifting mid-stride into his massive black wolf, howling for his elite guard. They rode through the night, pushing their horses to the breaking point, following the trail Willow's convoy had taken. They found the slaughter at dawn. The convoy had been ambushed 5 miles from the fortress. Bodies littered the road. Alexei's best warriors, cut down by overwhelming numbers. The carriage was overturned, its cushions shredded, blood soaking into expensive fabrics. But no Willow, no Kieran. Just a trail of blood leading into the forest. Alexei followed it into enemy territory, his wolf barely controlled beneath his skin. They found Marcus's remaining forces camped in a ravine, celebrating their victory. Alexei tore through them like the conqueror of legend, brutal and unstoppable, giving no quarter and accepting no surrender. His elite guard fought beside him, but everyone could see their king had gone beyond tactics into pure savage rage. When the last enemy fell, they found Nadia bound in one of the tents. "I didn't mean for this," she sobbed as Alexei's warriors dragged her forward. "Marcus approached me weeks ago, promised me power if I helped him. I thought the poison would just make Willow sick, that you'd send her away and finally see me." She broke off as Alexei turned those winter storm eyes on her. "Brother, please. You are no sister of mine." His voice was utterly empty. "You poisoned my mate. You put my son in danger. You betrayed your pack. Alexei, you're banished. If you ever return, I'll kill you myself." Nadia's wail followed them as they left her with one of Marcus's dead warriors' horses and enough supplies for 3 days. Alexei felt nothing. All his focus had narrowed to a single purpose, finding Willow before it was too late. They tracked for another hour before one of his warriors called out. A hidden cave, its entrance masked by undergrowth, fresh blood on the stones. Alexei entered alone. What he found would haunt him. Willow in her white wolf form collapsed against the cave wall, barely breathing. Kieran was tucked beneath her, protected by her body even as she died. She'd used the last of her strength to shift, to keep her pup safe, even though shifting with wolfsbane in her system was killing her faster. Willow. Alexei shifted back to human, crawling to her side. Willow, please, stay with me. Her amber wolf eyes opened, barely focused. Blood stained her white fur black. I can save you, Alexei said desperately. But I need your consent. I need you to let me complete the bond. Please, Willow, I know you hate me, but please, I can't lose you. Kieran can't lose you. She whined, a pitiful sound that broke something in his chest. I should have told you before. Should have been honest. The words tumbled out in a rush. I didn't send you away because I chose war over you. I sent you away because bonding you without consent would destroy any chance we had. Because you deserved the choice your first mate never gave you. Rowan bonded you the night you met before you knew who he really was. I learned that from the elders. Willow's wolf eyes sharpened slightly, confusion flickering through the pain. You told me once you wanted to study healing, but Rowan forbade it because it wasn't proper for an alpha's mate. You wanted to travel, but he kept you close. The bond made you agreeable, made you accept what you never would have chosen freely. Alexei's voice cracked. I refuse to do that to you. Even if it meant watching you die hating me, I wouldn't steal your choice. A sound escaped Willow's wolf, something between a whine and a sob. So I'm asking now, while you can still answer, will you accept my bond? Will you let me save you? He pressed his forehead to hers. Will you choose me, Willow? Not because fate demands it, but because you want to? For a long moment, the only sound was Kieran's soft breathing and Willow's labored pants. Then, with visible effort, she shifted back to human form. It should have been impossible with wolfsbane coursing through her veins, but somehow she managed it. She lay naked and dying in the cave dirt, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Alexei didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms and bit down where her neck met her shoulder, right over the faded scar where Rowan's mark had been. The bond snapped into place fully for the first time, no longer just potential but realized, complete, absolute. And something impossible happened. Light exploded from Willow's body, pure and golden and utterly unexpected. It flooded the cave, washing over Alexei and Kieran and the wounded warriors who'd followed them. Alexei felt his injuries, a deep gash across his ribs, claws marks on his shoulder, close and heal as if they'd never been. Around him, his warriors gasped as their wounds likewise vanished. The light was coming from Willow. She arched in his arms, her eyes flying open and glowing that same golden color. Power poured from her in waves, ancient and primal, something that had been dormant until this moment. Alexei felt it through the bond, saw flashes of understanding that made his breath catch. This was what the prophecy meant. Not just Kieran, but Willow herself. She was the bridge, the Omega with alpha strong power, the healer who could unite through strength rather than submission. Her gift had been suppressed her whole life, first by circumstance, then by Rowan's possessive bond that wanted her weak and dependent. Now, fully bonded to an alpha who valued her choice, her true power awakened. The light faded slowly, and Willow slumped against Alexei's chest, breathing hard but alive. Healed. The wolfsbane was gone, burned away by whatever she'd become. Alexei held her, trembling with relief and awe, as Kieran started crying in that demanding way of newborns everywhere. Willow laughed, actually laughed, and reached for their son. He's hungry, and probably traumatized, and definitely needs a clean cloth. He's perfect, Alexei said roughly. You're both perfect. I thought, when I found you, I know. She cupped his face with one hand, her amber eyes clear and certain. I heard everything you said, about Rowan, about the choice, about why you sent me away. I understand now. Her thumb traced his jaw. You've been protecting me all along, haven't you? Even when it cost you everything. You're my mate. It's what mates do. Then let me protect you too. She sat up straighter, still cradled in his arms, and called out to the warriors crowding the cave entrance. Come here, all of you. They obeyed, though Alexei could see their confusion. Willow placed one hand on the nearest warrior's shoulder, a young man who'd taken an arrow through the leg, and that golden light flickered again, gentler this time. The warrior's leg healed completely. She moved through them one by one, healing injuries they'd thought would scar, mending broken bones with a touch. When she reached the last warrior, she swayed with exhaustion and Alexei caught her. That's enough. You need rest. I need to do this. She looked around at the assembled wolves, then raised her voice. I claim Alexei as my mate before all of you, not because fate forced me, but because he gave me the choice when he didn't have to, because he valued my will over his own desires, because he's the alpha this world needs. The warriors dropped to one knee as one, and through the bond, Alexei felt Willow's fierce pride, but she wasn't done. Bring Nadia here. The command shocked everyone. Alexei tensed. Willow, she tried to kill you. I know what she did. Willow's voice was gentle but firm. And I know why. She was jealous, desperate for your attention, and Marcus exploited that. She made a terrible choice, and she'll live with the consequences. But executing her or banishing her forever just continues the cycle of vengeance. She looked up at Alexei. You've built a kingdom on conquest. Let me build one on mercy. She poisoned you. And I'm alive. We're all alive. Willow gestured to the healed warriors. She gave Marcus information, yes, but she also didn't know about the second ambush. In her mind, she was just making me leave, not killing me. That's not the same as murder. Alexei stared at his mate, this Omega who'd lost everything and somehow found the strength to forgive. Slowly he nodded. They brought Nadia in, and she collapsed at Willow's feet, sobbing apologies. Willow let her cry, then spoke. You betrayed your alpha and endangered a pup. Those crimes deserve punishment, and you're banished for 1 year. But after that year, if you've proven yourself, you may return. Not as Alexei's sister, but as a pack member who must earn her place. Willow's eyes glowed faint gold. I'm giving you the same thing Alexei gave me, a choice. Use this year to decide who you want to be. Nadia nodded frantically and fled before anyone could reconsider. When she was gone, Alexei pulled Willow close and kissed her temple. You're going to change everything, aren't you? We are, Willow corrected. Together. Kieran chose that moment to wail again, and they both laughed. Above them, the dawn sun filtered into the cave, painting everything gold. They rode back to the fortress as the sun climbed higher, but they'd barely crossed into Nightshade territory when scouts met them with urgent news. 3 alphas had arrived at the fortress, the remnants of Marcus's alliance. They were demanding an audience, claiming the right to test the prophecy now that Marcus was dead. They want Kieran, Lady Thorne said grimly. They're saying his father is dead. You killed Marcus, who had the next best claim, and therefore the pup should be raised in neutral territory until he's old enough to choose his own path. Over my dead body, Willow said flatly. That may be what they're hoping for, Thorne replied. They've invoked the ancient rites. Challenge circle at sundown. They'll send 3 champions. You can send 3 of your own, or... She paused. Or you and your mate can fight together. The rites allow for bonded pairs. Alexei and Willow exchanged glances, and something passed between them through the bond. Understanding. Agreement. Unity. We fight together, they said in unison. The challenge circle was on neutral ground, an ancient clearing where packs had settled disputes for generations. By sundown, hundreds had gathered, not just from the three challenging packs, but from territories all across the north. Word had spread. The prophecy child would be tested today. Willow stood at the circle's edge with Alexei, Kieran strapped to her chest in a traditional Omega carrying wrap. She'd insisted on keeping him close, and the sight of a nursing mother preparing for battle had caused quite a stir. But no one dared question the Omega who'd healed an entire war party with a touch. The three rival alphas stood across from them, Helena of the mountain packs, Theron of the coastal territories, and Cassius of the eastern forests. All strong, all respected, all convinced that Kieran was too important to be raised by the man who'd killed his father. "We don't seek war," Helena called out, her voice carrying across the circle. "We seek truth. The prophecy says the pup will unite or destroy us. How can we trust that outcome to the Conqueror?" "Because the Conqueror is also my mate," Willow replied, stepping forward. "Because the prophecy isn't just about Kieran, it's about all of us. About building something new from the ashes of the old." Pretty words from a widow forced into a mate bond. "I wasn't forced." Willow's voice rang with conviction. "I chose Alexei. He gave me that choice when he didn't have to, when it would have been easier to simply take what fate offered. That's the kind of alpha you should want raising the next generation." "Then prove it," Theron challenged. "Fight beside him. Show us this bond is real, not political convenience." Willow handed Kieran to Lady Thorne, who'd been waiting at the edge of the circle. Then she and Alexei stepped forward together. The fight was unlike anything the assembled packs had ever seen. Alexei and Willow moved like two halves of one creature, the mate bond letting them anticipate each other's movements with supernatural precision. When Helena's champion struck at Alexei's left, Willow was already there, deflecting the blow. When Theron's champion tried to flank Willow, Alexei intercepted with brutal efficiency. But it was more than just coordination. The bond itself seemed to enhance them, Willow's golden omega light wrapping around Alexei's alpha darkness, creating something entirely new. They shifted in perfect synchronization, their wolves fighting with the same uncanny unity, and the champions fell one by one. When the last champion yielded, Willow and Alexei stood in the circle's center, barely winded, surrounded by stunned silence. Then Willow shifted back to human form and spoke, her omega voice carrying supernatural weight that made every wolf present straighten to attention. "You want to know if Kieran will unite or destroy?" She looked around at the assembled packs. "That depends on what world we build for him. If we continue as we have, conquering, fighting, treating omegas as property and alphas as tyrants, then yes, he'll destroy everything, because no child raised in violence can break free from it." She moved to the circle's center, and the crowd parted instinctively. "But if we build something different, if we unite not through conquest but choice, if we give omegas voices and alphas accountability, if we make pack membership about belonging instead of dominance, then Kieran will unite us, because he'll grow up seeing that unity is possible." The golden light flickered around her again, gentle but undeniable. "I'm an omega with alpha strong power. My mate is a conqueror who chose mercy over force. Our son is the child of two alphas raised by cooperation instead of combat. We're already breaking every tradition you think is sacred." She turned to Helena, Theron, and Cassius. "So here's my offer. Join us. Not as conquered territories, but as equal partners. Send representatives to a council where Omega, Beta, and Alpha voices all carry weight. Help us build laws that protect everyone, not just the strong. Prove that unity doesn't require bloodshed." "And if we refuse?" Cassius asked. Alexei stepped forward, and his alpha presence rolled across the clearing like thunder. "Then you fight me, all three of you, and you lose, because I don't fight alone anymore." He gestured to Willow. "We're offering you something unprecedented, a chance to shape the future instead of being conquered by it. I suggest you take it." The three alphas exchanged long glances. Then Helena stepped forward and with visible effort bent the knee. "I accept your offer, Not because you defeated our champions, but because your Omega speaks truth. The old ways are dying. We need something new. Theron followed, then Cassius, each bending the knee not to Alexei alone, but to both of them. One by one, the assembled packs did the same, until the clearing was a sea of wolves acknowledging their new rulers. Willow and Alexei stood at the center, Kieran crying lustily as Lady Thorne brought him back, and they looked at each other with the same thought. Somehow, impossibly, they'd done it. The prophecy had begun to fulfill itself. 6 months later, the coronation took place in the great hall of Alexei's fortress. Though it was their fortress now, Willow reminded herself, just as it was their kingdom. The ceremony was a blend of old traditions and new innovations. Omega priests blessed them alongside Alpha warriors, Beta council members stood witness beside nobility, and Kieran, now a chubby, laughing 6-month-old, was presented as crown prince with honors given to both his birth father and Alexei. Willow wore a gown of silver and gold, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly where Alexei's pup grew, strong and certain. She'd discovered the pregnancy 2 months ago, and this time there was no fear, only joy. As the crown settled on her head, a delicate circlet of silver leaves, made specifically for her, Willow looked out at the assembled crowd. Packs from across all territories had come, united under the new banner. A silver wolf and a gold wolf intertwined beneath a crown. The Omega's crown, they were calling it. A symbol that strength came in many forms. After the ceremony, Alexei and Willow escaped to the gardens where they'd first begun to soften toward each other. Kieran babbled happily in Willow's arms, trying to grab at the flowers while Alexei's hand rested possessively on her hip. "Thank you," Alexei said quietly. Willow looked up at him, this alpha who'd conquered 12 packs and then let her conquer him in return. "For what?" "For teaching me that true strength isn't conquest. It's unity. It's choosing mercy when you've earned the right to vengeance." He kissed her temple. "You changed everything." "We changed everything," Willow corrected, the same words she'd spoken in that cave 6 months ago. Together. She thought of Rowan sometimes, not with the sharp grief of those early days, but with gentle remembrance. He'd given her Kieran, and she would always honor that. But loving Alexei didn't diminish Rowan's memory. Her heart had simply grown bigger, making room for both the past she'd survived and the future she was building. Kieran squealed and pointed at the garden entrance, where children from multiple packs were playing together, Omega, Beta, and Alpha pups mixing without hierarchy or fear. Lady Thorne supervised with a fond smile, and even Nadia was there, recently returned from her banishment and working hard to earn her place back. "That's the prophecy fulfilled," Willow murmured, watching the children. Not just Kieran, but all of them, growing up in a world where unity is normal instead of impossible. Alexei's hand moved to her belly, feeling for the flutter of their growing pup. "What should we name this one?" "Something hopeful," Willow decided. "Something that speaks to what we've built." They stood together in the garden, their son between them and their future growing within her, and watched the sun set over their united kingdom. In the distance, wolves howled, not in challenge or conquest, but in celebration. The prophecy had promised unity or destruction. Against all odds, they'd chosen unity. And in choosing it together, they'd found something even the gods hadn't predicted, a love strong enough to change the world.